Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and this is the second topic video in my new YouTube channel, Politics 2100. And it follows from the first video, which was about the PR campaign to shield the GOP from liability and from responsibility for its own way of doing politics and doing public policy. That is a bipartisan affair. It's a big, long, multi-decade project that has kept the GOP in stealth mode. So one of the things that is, the real GOP, in other words, the people haven't been able to recognize the GOP, and the GOP itself doesn't understand who it is, or at least some of the GOP, because of this campaign that I was discussing, PR, unintended, unorganized, but still a gentle treatment in the public sphere of the Republican Party, and also the far right wing. So this video is trying to answer the question: is the current Republican Party a neo-fascist party? So I wrote a piece in January of last year, or it was part of a series of pieces called, this piece is called 21st Century Machiavellians, the Gaslighting Neo-Fascist Gangsters of the Republican Party. And I want to make the case that this is a true representation of who the Republican Party is becoming, and but I also will provide at the end a few counter examples of how it's not that. In other words, how it might be, I might be wrong, or one can make the argument that certain aspects of this characterization are wrong. Anyway, so what is fascism, or what is neo-fascism? So fascism is an ethno-nationalist political movement that is a response to, or often to, crises, cultural crises, and it's organized around usually a single charismatic leader, or it could occasionally be a group, a junta of military officers sometimes. And so, but in the case of the Republican Party, we're talking about the emergence, at least, of a single individual in terms of Donald Trump, to become the focus of this ethno-nationalist movement, and that one of some of the features of fascism that are clearly evident in the current Republican Party, and also in our politics through them, and also through the media outlets that are allied with the Republican Party, is the distortion of reality and the deployment of lying and of gaslighting, as I said in this title, the Gaslighting Neo-Fascist Gangsters. So and this is because, or there are a number of reasons why the lying comes into it, but anyway, and the distortion of reality. So anyway, there's a fantasy world that is created through this propaganda barrage from the party, and also from the organs that support the party, or that even control the party, in the case of Fox News. And that creates an environment where people do not recognize reality anymore, or at least a consensual reality. They have no way of knowing what is real and what isn't, or not no way, but they sometimes choose to involve themselves in this unreal fantasy. And the fantasy is about, in part, a bygone era that has been lost. So Make America Great Again, which is Trump's formulation of it, and that has been deployed to you know, call upon mostly some older people. There's some younger people as well, but older people to say, well, you know, things were better back when, and we wanted to go back there. Okay, and what makes them it's not just conservatism. It is an effort to overturn the current order. So that's another thing about fascism. Fascism is a reactionary movement that attempts to root out and eliminate what they consider to be the bad or the modern parts of society that they don't like, and often and almost always that is identified with certain groups of people, sometimes political opponents, and often a mix of political ideology and also racial, ethnic groups that are considered to be outgroups, that are then targeted. And if it gets to that point, there are efforts to eliminate those groups, as happened in Nazi Germany in the 1930s and 40s. So and we appear to be on a course towards something like that with the Republican Party. So the events of January the 6th now can pretty much be characterized as a coup attempt, and that is also in keeping with this characterization of the Republicans as a neo-fascist party, because, among other things, you know, fascists often start out trying to organize coups against the government they feel to be corrupt, decadent, and they are overturning this old order, and then they're going to deploy sometimes their organized shock troops. I'm talking about now in the case of Nazi Germany, the brown shirts, the street fighters, and that were associated with the Nazi Party, and they drew upon. There was also the roots of the Nazi Party came from disaffected World War I veterans, including Hitler himself, who felt misused or duped by the German government of the time, and then also there developed a whole mythos, or Hitler formulated a mythos of what happened, and there were, for instance, the stab in the back myth, which you know, which also was associated with Jews. In other words, Jews became the scapegoat for this particular betrayal that he was so concerned about. So similarly, now it's in current America, it's not Jews that are the target, but you know, there is this idea of a big lie that is, I mean, the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany. The big lie is here that you know, that there was you know, a stolen election, and that and there are these efforts to overturn the election by any means necessary, because it's been the idea that the January 6th you know, rioters had, it was that you know, that someone had stolen an election from Trump, and he therefore they were justified in trying to ransack the Capitol and trying to overturn the legal process that was happening there. So this gets to another characteristic of fascism being you know, hostility to rule of law and hostility to democracy also. In other words, that I mean, they think that they are enacting, quote unquote, the will of the people by doing what Trump's will is, which is trying to remain in power, but they are circumventing all of the apparatus, including the voting apparatus and all the votes that were cast in 2020, to try to get what they want. Okay, and so that hostility to rule of law means that eventually they try to create their own set of laws that, which is happening in some states, to conform to whatever they think they want to do, and to try to replace the laws of the country, with those laws that favor their minoritarian group. In other words, this group that's protected by the supposedly protected by the fascist party, or and so anyway, and another feature of and the reason why I called it gangsters of the Republican Party is another feature of the leadership of fascist movements is often they are sociopathic and mentally disturbed in other ways, and so we have Bolsonaro in Brazil. We have Hitler was a deeply disturbed individual, and also Donald Trump is a deeply disturbed individual, and but this common thread among the leadership or among the groups of people who surround these leaders is sociopathy, or a lack of really any internal conscience or ability to judge ethically what is right and wrong, and either simple submission to a leader, or grabbing of power, grabbing of money and power, in different forms. And so you have a carnival of both of those happening, both in the orbit of Trump, and then also in other aspects and other parts of the Republican Party. So, and it's attracting people like Matt Gaetz, who appears to be a sociopath, or at least from his appearances, and so there's a general movement in that direction. So, a gangster is a group of sociopaths. In other words, one person can be a sociopath all by themselves, but then together they can form a mini society of gangsters, a gang, and so you have Donald Trump acting like a godfather, trying to hit up election officials, issuing veiled threats to them, seeing the apparatus of the state as a form of personal militia, or really a personal sort of gang that he can order around to do his dirty work. And so anyway, so there's a lot of evidence that the Republican Party has been trending toward fascism for at least the time that Trump sort of took over the party in 2016, but there are currents even from earlier that made it susceptible to becoming this fascist party, and among other things. And I in this piece that I'm going to put the link in the description box, I sort of distilled what I thought was, I'm pretty happy with this distillation, 4 different ideological streams which the Republican Party had before Trump, got into the seat of power he is currently in the party, and those 4 elements, and you can read more about them in the piece, are Christian evangelical fundamentalism, dominionism, social conservatism, so not something that really Trump was strong on, but he made an alliance with those people, libertarianism, market fundamentalism, small government conservatism, that's another stream, and then also white supremacism, neo-Confederate ideology, racism, xenophobia. I'm all putting slashes here because they're related phenomenon, or they're words that describe a related things that are part of a political movement or part of political ideology. And then finally, authoritarianism, sadism, law of the jungle, gun fetishism, and militarism. I put these all together, in my 4 bullet points here. And so, so certainly the last 2 are very strongly Trumpian, okay, and also seems to be the trend that he pushed in the party, that he drew out people who thought these things. He created an environment where it became acceptable within the party, and then also even in the broader society to he gave people license, not an actual physical license, but he gave people the permission to let out some of their racism and their also the sadism of, for instance, police sadism and also his own sadism. So the by sadism, not the the sexual practice or whatever, but the sadism as a belief in might is right, a belief in that you only can convince people or persuade people by punching them, by imprisoning them, by even killing them. So and you can use other people as objects to get what you want, and there's a so in that I'm grouping that all together in that 4th bullet point there. So the arguments against the Republicans being a neo-fascist party. So also they're neo-fascist because I'm trying to insulate the argument from the criticism that some people have made. I got into some arguments with people on Twitter in the early part of the Trump era that, well, oh look, he's not a fascist, and there are people who continue to say this. He's not a fascist because there's no, where are the stormtroopers? Where are the where's the apparatus that we associate with the Nazi regime? Okay, well, I mean, he's not currently in power, so he doesn't control the government right now, or he or whatever. The party, the Republican Party, it could be Trump could fall away, and there could be some new leader that could try a similar thing. So it's not just the personality of Trump, but he has particular skills that have enabled him to get where he is, and even though he's not an intellectual person and he's not the absolute brightest person in the world, he's also a politically savvy person and intuitively understands certain aspects of people and their motivations that enable him to do to be politically fairly successful and adaptable, given other problems that he has. Okay, as a leader and also as a person, they're deep in their legion. Okay, and he's one of the worst human beings that we have in the United States. So, anyway, so the arguments against that the Republicans are a neo-fascist party. So they're So they're neo-fascist because they don't have the integrated structure that the Nazi Party had of having the stormtroopers, and also the activists all integrated within the party. There's a loose coalition between the propaganda apparatus, which is somewhat outside the Republican Party, in Fox News and in some other networks, and then also the stormtroopers, the shock troops of the regime, are loosely organized, and they are not necessarily even registered voters, as it turned out in January 6th. Some of the people who were demanding that Trump be instated as president were were not voters, so and non-voters, and so so it's not a integrated structure. So it's and also they use their new fascists or neo-fascists because they use social media, and they're using various cyber, along with their allies, some allies outside, again not integrated in the party, to cyber campaigns to undermine who they think are their enemies, or their people who are going to undermine their agenda. So it's a new fascism, and I think that Timothy Snyder, a Yale professor, has written about the kind of new fascism that he sees in, for instance, Vladimir Putin, who is somewhat allied with these same political forces, and at least we had some recent confirmation of that as well. But anyway, so what makes them not necessarily a neo-fascist party, or what could be argued against the neo-fascism, thesis, is that they're still elements of the party. Like you have Lynn Cheney, you have some Kinzinger as well. So you have some other still, and also, for instance, even Mitch McConnell, who's one of the most powerful people within the Republican Party, who are still trying to work within the structure of the existing government, and are not trying to overthrow the entire legal structure of the U.S. government. So you could say there is a fight, or let's say, or there's a very, very small fight going on within that party, but the overwhelming evidence is that certainly the base of the party is very much headed more in the neo-fascist direction. So there's such loyalty to Trump, and those Republicans that are not neo-fascists are not very popular. I mean, they represent some of the worst policy nightmares of the Republican Party over the last 30 years or 40 years, and including warmongering and all kinds of other unpopular things that, and not just unpopular, but unethical and terrible things. So they are not necessarily heroes that you would want as someone from like myself, who comes from a more progressive or left perspective. So anyway, so there's a couple different ways to look at the Republican Party, but and also another argument against the neo-fascism thesis is that it's a very thin commitment to fascism. There are not many ideological fascists within the party, in that they read a book like Mein Kampf or whatever. There's some that they openly study, and they have an intellectual commitment to sort of some aspect of like a neo-Nietzschean, belief in, Übermenschen or whatever, or just some kind of shared ideology. They act it out, though, and certainly now they've fallen into that, but they also, there are signs that they could potentially it could all fall apart. So it's a very superficial commitment on their part, but there are still many people who are working to push the party still further in that direction. So anyway, so this is an argument for viewing them as an almost entirely neo-fascist party, and getting even more close to that label, and therefore very, very dangerous. And they need to be the reason. The import of using that label is that political opponents, including Democrats, would then need to understand what are the techniques of someone or a group of political grouping that are fascists, and how you counter those techniques. How do you resist, or not only just resist, but overcome and defeat those that force, political force. And so a correct labeling leads to, I think, more correct, more effective political action, if that is the desire. And that's something that I've discussed in other pieces, the desire of the nominal opponents of the Republican Party, where they want to use what they know, and use, for instance, what I'm saying now, if they listened, or something similar from some other commentator, that they use that to help increase their power for good. Let's say to actually enact good things for the American people, for humanity in general. If that is their goal, they should use knowledge and understanding to get to that goal. And again, none of this can be assumed with the current Democratic leadership, unfortunately. So anyway, so if you enjoyed this video, if you have some comments and thoughts, please comment below on this video, and also please like it if you like it, and also subscribe to this channel. There's more to come. There's all kinds of different topics in both. I happen to be focusing currently a lot on the Republican Party. I can talk more about other issues, including international issues, and there's a number of areas where which I want to cover in upcoming video casts. So please like and subscribe, and see you soon.